Welcome to Stories That Matter. Thank you for coming out on July 27th. Are you ready to hear stories about their moment of truth? All right. Our first storyteller of the night, Hans Horning.
So have you ever noticed that those people that can say, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time, always have good stories to tell? Well, here's one of mine. In February of 1965, I reported for duty aboard the USS Canberra, a U.S. Navy heavy cruiser that was in the Philippines. She was in the Philippines. She had just transited over from the U.S. on her first Vietnam deployment. I had just graduated from Navy officer school. I was an ensign. That's the Navy's equivalent of a second lieutenant. Brand new ensigns and second lieutenants aren't worth a damn no matter where they come from. You need some experience, okay? But that's probably why in the Navy, a lieutenant is known as an ensign is known as being lower than whale shit. All right, I get it. It's not wrong. But I will say this. There is very little that civilian life prepares you for going to sea, joining the fleet, and being on a Navy warship. It's new. It's not like something in it. All right. The Canberra is a big ship. It's a heavy cruiser. Crew is about 1,100. We've got 6 8-inch guns and 10 5-inch guns. Now, to give you a sense of what that means, if the Canberra was down here in Courthouse Square, we could bombard Mayor with the 8-inch guns. And we could destroy Prescott Valley with the 5-inch guns. And whoever back there said, do it. I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that. All right, so that's a lot of firepower in one place. And our job was to cruise up and down the Vietnamese coastline, North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and fire shore bombardment in support of our troops ashore that were engaged with the enemy, try and knock out enemy supply and ammunition depots, marshalling areas, roads, bridges, and so forth. Now that might sound like pretty exciting stuff. Cruise up and down the shoreline, firing the big guns and so forth. But around the 30th, the 40th, the 50th, the 60th, mission got pretty routine. Pretty routine. Except when the 5-inch guns went into rapid salvo fire bang, 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 bang. That meant that they were firing at flashes on the beach. The bad guys were firing back at us, and we were in counter battery phase. Okay, one day I'm sitting down in a wardroom. That's where the officers take their meals. I'm not on watch. The 5-inch guns go into rapid salvo fire. I say to myself, I want to see this. So I run up inside the ship, inside the armor of the ship. I'm not exposed, all right? I go up to the O3 level, which is about 4 flights above the water, 4 stories above the water. I look off to my right-hand side as I come out onto 3. I see a fall of shots, enemy shot in water. I think, all right, that's cool. We are firing to starboard. We're firing off the right-hand side. They're firing back. They're falling short. We knew what their range was. Ours was longer, so we stayed out of their range. So everything's cool. All right? So that means the shoreline is over off my right-hand side. Okay? I look over there, no shoreline. I look out the port side, shoreline. That means that that shot passed over us. We're within range. They got us bracketed, and their next salvo was probably going to hit us. All right, all this processing is going on in my head and so forth, and no sooner does it get it than BAM! Actually, it was kind of a crack. Gun smoke, gunpowder, smell gunpowder, and so forth. And we had just been hit with a 3-gun salvo. The nearest of which 3 projectiles was about 20 feet away from where I was up there in the O3 level. All right. Keep that in mind. Hold that thought, 20 feet. Going to give you a fast rundown here on ballistics. Okay? The gunners, the Vietnamese gunners, that gun is on the ground. They're shooting out to sea. We're about 5 miles away. But they can't see us. The gunners can't see us. Why? Because of the curvature of the earth. And this whack job that drives around here in Prescott with the pickup with the thing that says hoax on it, and the world is flat. He has never stood watch on the bridge of a Navy ship. I hope he's not here. Jesus. All right, so they can't see us. Now, so the gunners are getting their targeting information from somewhere else. All right? So when somebody else located a different place than the gun is sending target information to the gun, there's a little bit of wiggle room all the time in there, okay? Might not be entirely accurate. Okay. All right, now, when you're shooting a gun out at sea and trying to hit something 5 miles away, all right? This is not like you line up the front sight with the rear sight, and pull the trigger, like it's a rifle shot. If you did that, Gravity would take that right into the sea, right into the sea. So you got to shoot a long looping shot like this. That means the shot has got to go up in the air. All air is not the same. Cold air is denser than warm air. Warm air has more water vapor, though. So temperature makes a big difference. The wind obviously makes a difference. We're a moving target. We're underway as we're firing our fire mission, so it's a moving target. And if all of that isn't enough, the world is still spinning. The world doesn't stop just because they're trying to hit us, okay? It's still spinning, and on a 23-degree axis. If any of those factors, those variables, was the slightest smidgen of a skoshi bit different, yours truly could have ended up as a red smear on the deck of the USS Canberra. All right, I'm up here telling the story. Obviously, that didn't happen. Life goes on. The ship was not terribly damaged. As that deployment went on, they started shooting airbursts at us. Fragmentation shells, they burst over the ship, rained shrapnel down on the ship. But that did even less damage, physical damage to the ship. But it drove us off, which was a win. As a win for them. That's just the way it was out there. I didn't think a lot about this, you know. And it wasn't until years and years later that I thought about all these different factors and variables and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, whoa, that was a bit of a close call there. All right, now, any story, I think, ought to have a point to it. There ought to be a message of some point, right? For a long while, I thought the message here was, hey, look, even in the simplest of situations, you know, should I go to the restaurant, I'm motivated. Should I go with my friend to Europe and say, there are so many variables, some of which you don't even know. Just do it. Just do it. And then I thought, you know, maybe all right for me to do that, but I don't know if I could recommend it to other people. Then I thought, maybe there's a little bit of divine intervention going on here, all right? Maybe the Almighty said, I can use this guy for something else, okay? It's not his time. But I dismissed that immediately because I knew that at the precise moment that the Almighty would have to intervene, and one of his staff said, what about Horning? He'd have said, who? You know it's true. You know it's true. Finally, the truth, over the years, the truth revealed itself to me. And that is that the guy up here telling you this story is dumber than a box of rocks. Who goes out sightseeing? We call it skylarking in the Navy. Who goes out skylarking in the middle of a counter-battery barrage? Only somebody with a few screws loose in his operating system. That's who. So the only thing conclusive I can say about this story is that seemed like a good idea at the time.
So ideas for stories come from some of the more unlikely places when we do themes. And I think for next year, March, when we do our first Stories of Matter, I think that's got to be one. It seemed like a good idea at the time. So Hans has been told a previous story. After he left the Navy, he spent a lot of time going up and down the eastern seaboard in his boat, spending some time in the intercoastal waterway. And he tells a story, and it's on Facebook, on YouTube. So if you go to the YouTube channel and you look up him, you'll hear that story. And it's a good one. It's a good one. When he said, when I asked him a bunch of different questions, he one of the things he was proudest of, he rose to the rank of captain in the Navy, which is a serious accomplishment. And which may be explained by the fact that when he was a toddler, he used to bang his head against the wall when he became frustrated and angry. So that there may be a causal relationship there. I'm not exactly sure, but anyways. So thank you, Hans. Appreciate it.